Hello everyone and welcome to the Cosmic Ascension Waves of Light with myself, Soma ARah, and guests. Today's guest is Philip Kinsella, who's based in the UK. He is a UFO abductee and author of several books. He's having some trouble with his audio, so he's having to restart his computer or his laptop. So please bear with him. Please bear with us. Today's date is the 27th of October 2020. Please come and share, like, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Carol Noonan. Noonan is spelt Noonan. You can also come and join the Cosmic Ascension Waves of Light group on Facebook and the Great Awakening of Humanity 2020 group on Facebook. If you would like a reading with me or a I can't speak this evening. If you would like a reading with me or a direct voice channeling session from the Pleiadians, please email at me at thepleiadianchild.com, and I will spell that out. It's the Pleiadian Child. Pleiadian is spelt Pleiadian, child at hotmail.com. So I'd like to welcome everyone for joining us this evening. And okay, so I'm just going to admit Philip here again. Please do bear with us because he is having technical difficulties with his system. Okay. So let me see. Do we have Philip?
Ah,
are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
No, I think he still has.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you, Soma, clearly. And I've checked the audio. Let me just have a look.
So where will I start? I'm a channel for the Pleiadians, and bear with me a minute. I just need to message Philip.
Can you see me?
Okay, so I'm a channel for the Pleiadians, and I have been since 2009, 2010. Yeah, so if anyone would like a reading, I do personal readings through Zoom or Skype or Facebook or also the telephone. So please get in touch. My email is thepleiadianchild at hotmail.com. And I've been a channel for the Pleiadians consciously since 2009, 2010. And then I had, then I started to do shamanic courses in Ireland. And I began to have memories of having connected to them as a child. So yeah, bear with me 1 second. Do you know, I'm going to take a little break. I know I've just started the show, but I'm going to go and try and help Philip. So I'm going to play a piece of music that's called New Earth by Elijah Ray. And I do have permission to use this. So, so here we go. Okay, and I believe we have Philip with us now. Philip, are you there?
Yes, Soma, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you perfectly. Finally.
Thank goodness for that. Oh dear Lord, a little bit of technical issues, and I had to reboot the system, and I kept it on for a long time so there wouldn't be any issues. And then when I came on, I found that something wasn't switched on this end. But never mind, we've made it. Thank goodness for your patience. I'm so blessed by your patience. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Philip. I sometimes I do get a real problem with this end, you know, with my internet and things, and for no other reason other than I'm doing a live interview.
Yes.
So I'm quite used to it by now. So yes, I would love to welcome Philip Kinsella to the show this evening. And so we've been live on Facebook for about 5 minutes. We are streaming live to the Paranormal United Network over in America. So Philip Kinsella is a UFO abductee and the author of several books, and he's based in the UK. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Philip? And thank you so much for being on my show and connecting with me.
That's fine, and I'm so honored to come on your show. I'm just so embarrassed that I had a few issues my end. These things do happen, but you know, it happens to the best of all of us at times. Well, what can I say? Well, to be honest with you, this all began, my interest in the UFO subject began when I was 13, even younger than that, but actually when we were 13, because I'm an identical twin, and my twin brother and Ronald, myself, are very close. And what actually happened was that before the abduction, and the only abduction that I recall, there may have been another one, that's not discounting the UFO sightings that we have had at close range. But when we were 13, we used to stay with our maternal grandmother and grandfather up in Feltham in Middlesex in a big house. And on a particular summer's day, we were met, just me, my brother, and my grandmother out in the back garden by this silver sphere that came out from nowhere. And we could see it across the sky. And we thought, first of all, it was a balloon. But as it got nearer, it was anything other than a balloon. And we discovered that it was a complete sphere, about the size of a football. It made no sound. There were no markings on it. And this sphere actually came over one of the trees and then amazingly came over my grandmother's head, not too low down to her head. And we asked her, what was this? Because we're 13 years of age. And she said, because she was psychic, she said, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us. Well, we knew that wasn't true because, well, I'm not discounting the mythology of fairy folklore, but I think she was trying to hide something that was far more sensational. And we saw the sphere lifting up and moving across the house because it was a very large house. It was 3 stories high. It seemed to be looking through the bedroom windows, and then it went over the top of the house, and we ran in the house to watch it from the other end of the building as it disappeared into the sky. And I remembered listening to my grandmother on the telephone, talking excitedly to family members about what had happened. But you know, it was the most strangest thing. And although people will say to you, well, it was this or it's that, I'm sure you're aware that when you are in the company of high strangeness, it seems to distort reality. And now that was the first beginning point of my interest in UFOs. And at that point also, my brother had an experience that is too long-winded to go into here. But my abduction in 1989 heralded...
Can I just slow you down a bit, Philip? I'm sorry. So your granny had this experience with you?
Yes.
So was she shocked, or did she not make anything of it, or what was her reaction?
No, and what was very bizarre was that she treated the whole experience as quite ordinary, and it was as if she'd seen them before. And this is something that we have written about and tried to analyze and understand. She never gave any mention that she'd seen anything like this before, but for her two grandsons watching this was quite astounding. But she was very calm, and And this is the thing that really shocked me. And I still to this day can't get over. So if she had been in this world, this side of life, I would love to have asked her all those years later, had you had any experiences of them before? But I know that within our family, we've had UFO sightings that I think predominantly do connect to a vast majority of the people on the planet Earth. So no, in answer to your question, my lovely, it was just like, it just happened. She must have been a little bit shocked because when she was speaking on the phone to the family that night, she was amazed, but it didn't seem she didn't seem fazed by it. It was very bizarre.
Yeah, it does sound like she was she had seen them before. So you had started, I interrupted you, I'm sorry, you had started to share another experience.
Yes, I mean, we had seen UFOs, my brother and I, throughout our life, sometimes at close range. But, you know, if you went up to someone and told them that you'd seen a UFO back in the 80s, you would have been laughed all the way to the Leads.
Yeah.
So the family basically didn't talk about it, or there was no one to really to discuss, because in those days, there was no groups that we have today, or, you know, people, learned minds who could help you understand on a psychological level what may have been presented to you. But it was 1989 that heralded the complete shift, a paradigm shift within my thinking with regards to what is called abduction. And you hear of good abductions and you hear of bad abductions. But I must be very cautious and state, although the experience that I had in 1989 had been negative through my mindset, there may be alternative reasons as to why that happened. And that was an experience that changed everything for me. Yes.
And before you, because I really would love to hear your experience, but before you get into that, I just want to share that in 2009, I also had an abductee experience. I was living in Galway. I just left my husband. I just had separated from my husband, who was living in London. So I moved to Galway, and I had this experience with the Greys, and I was taken up on board. And there's a reason I'm sharing this, is because I want to ask you a question about it. But so I was taken up on board. It was in the dream time, so I was asleep, and I was taken up on board, and I was on this kind of table. It was very cold, and I could hear other people screaming and moaning in agony. And I had a sense of other people around me as well, men and women. I don't know if there were any children there, because I can't remember that, but I know there were men and women. And then on my left-hand side, for some reason, I opened my eyes, or I woke up in the dream, in the experience, and there was 2 Greys on my left-hand side, and there was 1 Grey on my right-hand side. I think that's the way around it was. But they were doing experiments on me and on other people. And then I looked at them. I looked at the 2 on my left, and they were talking to me telepathically. And they said to each other, "This one's different." And because of that, I don't know, I still to this day, well, I kind of do know why I'm different, but I didn't really understand it at the time. But they said, "This one's different." And they stopped. Because of that, they stopped whatever they were going to do, which wasn't good. And the one on the right was just kind of, I felt that the one on the right was, I don't know, was younger, maybe, I'm not sure. And then I tried to get back into my body, because for years, since I was a child, I've been leaving my body and going out of my body through trauma, and connected to the Pleiadians as well through trauma and leaving my body. But in this experience, I couldn't get back into my body. You know, and people need to understand that I was, you know, I've been doing this since I was a child, and I'm 46 now. So this was over 10 years ago, in 2009, 11 years ago. and I couldn't get back into my body. There was some type of energetic field or something stopping me getting back into my body. But eventually I did get back in because I woke up in the morning. So I just wanted to ask you about that, even before you share your own experience, because I know that you're a UFO abductee as well by the Greys.
Yes. Well, you know, the experience afterwards led me on a crusade to find out what the Greys were, where they come from, why they're here, and what they're doing. And it was actually going forward some years later after the initial abduction that I had, that came in two parts, one physical, one non-physical. And this interested me on a theoretical level of research. And in 1996, I was credited with a revolutionary speculation with regards to the Greys, or a certain faction of them, because we got to understand that there probably are different factions of Greys as there are different factions of people. What interested me was the basis of how the Greys are able to abduct someone. Ordinarily, in some situations, they need to be in close range of the individual. And I suspect what's happening, and this deals on a very deeper level, that, you know, I've had arguments with, but not arguments as in, you know, destructive arguments, constructive arguments, because I'm open to all forms of speculation.
Discussion.
I'm not stating, yeah, that's correct. We have to all widen our horizons with regards to theoretical debate. But I suspect that through the research that I've been doing, that the Greys are interested in reproduction, in human reproduction, in hybridization. Now, my question was, why would an alien species that themselves cannot create be interested in some kind of hybridization program? And this led me to the theoretical analysis that perhaps we're dealing with a hive mind consciousness that is outside the field of creation, i.e., for instance, we have to think way outside the box here. As human beings, we have what we call a soul. And we understand that that soul comes in and out of bodies in a process of reincarnation, incarnation. And that soul carries memories from one vessel to another through varied lives of its choosing. At least that's the theoretical angle of what we understand about the other side, or the spirit world. Now, if something cannot be replicated through the birthing cycle, my understanding was that, well, if the Greys are using us as the instruments or the vessels for their interbreeding, it must state that they need us for a purpose or reason. Now, each of us are unique within our development of humans, because we have what we call a soul, and we build upon those experiences that make us uniquely what we are. Yes, we are clones descensively, but not a complete replica, because otherwise I'll be the same as you and there'll be millions of you somewhere. So we're unique, we're different. So I suspect what's happened is that the Greys perhaps have cloned themselves to the point where when they die, or the physical copy of the clone dies, cannot get back to source, because they're so far removed from the original imprint of creation. And therefore they found a species that can actually replicate. So what I'm saying here is that the interesting part of an abduction is that the Greys can take you through walls and doors, which means that either they have technology like Star Trek, or they're actually removing the etheric part of you, the real part of you, and bring it into their field frequency of awareness. And whatever they do to the body will still affect the physical part of you, because it's still connected. So this led me, it's very interesting with what you were saying with regards to your experience. And I hear this so many times, which is amazing, although it's very frightening, because we don't understand what we're dealing with on an empirical level of conscious understanding. The Greys go about their business as though they do have a right to do what they're doing. I've heard this before about other people. One of those was my good friend Terry Lovelace, who wrote the book Incident at Devil's Den. And he reported the same thing, where he was taking on board a huge triangular craft, and he saw all these people standing around naked with their garments folded in their arms.
Were they human?
The aliens were Greys. The humans that were on the craft he assumed were like him, had been people who'd been captured or what they call abducted. So I think it's really fascinating that, you know, we're dealing with a situation here where the Greys, for want of a better word, are intent in hiding their modus operandi because it's so secret, or they don't want to interfere with us. But we do remember, people do recall, because people are smart, you see. But it is very interesting, I think, that although I primarily had what I call an abduction, and what's interesting, Summer, as you said, and I love that when you said part of it was like a dream. Well, if you go back into the UFO department of investigations, you will also find, and I'm sure that many other of those brilliant souls listening to the program, that the famous Betty and Barney Hill case, where they had an initial physical encounter, but then the rest of the experiences came through in dream state. So this is what I think we're having to deal with on a psychological level. And I'm absolutely stating here that the Greys are real, that they're abducting people. But I think that we've been force-fed this belief that we're dealing with one physical component, when actually there are several theoretical parts to this that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and you know, we really have been lied to on a mass scale about everything, about our science, about our history, about technology, you know, just everything, especially money as well, you know. So I wanted to ask one of the, I mean, I have a load of questions here, Philip. One of the things I'd like to ask you is, what kind of career were you doing at the time, or work were you doing at the time when you had this experience, when you had your first Grey experience, abductee experience?
Yes, it was in 1989, the winter of 1989. We lived in the small village of Marston Mortain, and I worked in retail. So I didn't drive during that time. And I had to get a train to and from work. So I eventually went into retail, and that was my job. But I really wanted to be a writer of children's books, of science fiction. I really didn't really have, although I had a burning curiosity about the UFO subject, it wasn't something that dominated my life. Indeed, the events that led up to the experience back in 1989, the high strangeness of that led me to the understanding that we're dealing with something that goes way beyond the nuts and bolts syndrome of within ufology. And I totally respect my peers and other researchers. But what happened was that I had come back from work. It was in the winter, so it was dark. And my journey would have got me home about 7:15 at night. And at that time, we lived in quite a large house in a cul-de-sac. And when I went into the house, there was my brother and my sister. And yes, I've been poked fun on the media circuits about this. The dog. We had a dog. And it was only me and the dog that were privy to what we experienced. The other two were in the room with me when this happened. So basically, I went through the hall. And it's all frosted glass doors. And I went into the kitchen, leaned myself, against the cabinet so I could see through to the open hallway. And the dog was sitting in front of me, and we were talking about this or that. My brother is in front of me, facing me, so he's in the dining area, so he can't see through to the hall. And my sister is further to the left. What happened, this was not the abduction. That came afterwards in the early hours of the morning, that I was told not to put in my books in the early days because of its graphic nature. But what happened was that the atmosphere started to change, or there was a change in the atmosphere. So it was like almost like the hairs on your arms and the top part of your neck going up. And we all noticed this change in the environment, sorry. And then all of a sudden, this light appeared from the driveway to our house. And I thought that my mum had come back from work early because she was doing a night shift. And what happened was this light got brighter and brighter. And as this light got brighter and brighter, that was coming up towards the frosted glass windows to the door, because they're all frosted glass there, was that my brother suddenly went into a trance. I assume it was a trance. We're working with another researcher, and we found some incredible similarities to the unfolding events. He went into a trance and he looked up to the ceiling, his mouth opened, and he said, "There's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die. Well, there was no earthquake, and our maternal grandmother had still been alive during that point. And as he said that, the dog started to growl and bark, and the glass to the front of the door, this is unbelievable, was bending backwards and forwards as though the light was somehow softening the structure of the glass. And I'm standing there looking at this while my brother's in a trance. It all happened in a matter of probably about 30, 40 seconds. You're not going to, I didn't stand there and count it on a watch, you know. But then this small being that was roughly 3 feet in height, thin, wore a one-piece uniform, all black, entirely in black, and had what I assumed was a motorcycle helmet on its head. Although it wasn't a motorcycle helmet, it just showed me that the protrusion of the head was bigger, much larger in comparison to the body. It stepped through the glass, and then the glass returned back to normal. At this point, the dog's going absolutely balmy, and it ran into what then had been my brother's study stroke bedroom, because there was a shower room down there as well, straight in front to the right. Well, I couldn't believe it. My brother snapped out of his trance or whatever. Everything seemed to come alive. The dog was going absolutely crazy. I reached behind me and pulled out the sharpest, longest knife I could find, and I said, "There's an intruder in the house." And I think at that point the shock hit me, and I shouted, "There's an intruder in the house." And at that point, this thing, whatever it was, ran from our room across the hall and up the stairs, the stairs to the next level of the house, which is obviously covered by a wall. But we saw it, myself and the dog saw it. And we searched the house and we found nothing, and I broke down. And that was just the start of a very bizarre experience. The second part happened in what I consider to be some type of out-of-body experience. Because then I found myself in the early hours of that morning floating 3 feet from the floor through the hall of where the entity had come through, on my back. I wake up stunned. I can't control myself. It feels like I'm being controlled. I'm being pulled on my back, head front, and I'm going through the kitchen door, which is glass. I'm then going through the conservatory glass doors, and I'm wheeled round and I can see these UFOs. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, I'm awake, I'm aware, I'm here, and the UFOs are up there. And when I caught sight of one of these objects that was hanging in the sky, there were all these lights moving past, and I thought, my goodness me, they're real. They're real. You know, there was no doubt. Yeah. But then I was lifted up and I had a feeling in my stomach of like a whoosh, and I was being drawn closer to this object that seemed darker in comparison to the others. I believe, if I remembered correctly, that it was silver in color, spherical. And then when I got almost to it, I blacked out. And this is where the next part, where I suffered, unfortunately, on the media television circuits, because that's where things changed for me through my understanding of the grays, as it were. But I then woke up and found myself disorientated. I was confused. I was hot. And I found myself laying on a hard bed, although it's not the bed that we normally would sleep in. It felt medical, or it felt hard. And the room that I was in was kind of dark, but it was so hot. And when I lifted myself up, I felt restraints on my arms and legs. And the horror of and disorientation of not knowing where I was paramount when I saw, and this is where everything seems to fall apart, but I now understand, because I don't lie and I don't deal with sensationalism. I just report the facts as they happened. There were 3 what I would consider to be reptilians that were to my right. They were covered in a thicker, dense fog, and they were moving backwards and forwards, side by side, in this strange, I don't know what it was, just, and I started to scream because I felt that there was something in the lower part of my abdomen, and this felt like it was organic, and where it had been placed, I could feel it within the bowel pulsating. this horrified me. And this is the thing. This is the
Well,
really.
that must have been horrific.
Let me tell you, I started to scream at that point, and this is something that I
Was
think.
Was it painful, or could you just feel it without any pain?
It wasn't painful. It was the feeling, the sensations. It's like when you go in for a medical procedure and they, I don't know if I was anesthetized. I couldn't tell you, but it's like that feeling when you know that there is something there, and you can feel it. Well, this is where I suffered, unfortunately, because the media had a field day because they said, "Oh, you know, you probed and all the rest of it." So you suffer in silence. But I'll carry on with what happened. As I'm screaming, because it's the worst feeling ever of total degradation and something akin to rape, as it were, I guess. But the only thing that I felt was I wanted this thing out of me, whatever it was. I wanted it out of me. And as I was screaming and yelling, I don't know for how long, this grey appeared. And it was more of a creamy color than the grey. And instantly, I felt this thing being retracted and the clamps around me loosening. So I was able to I was ordered to get up. And the three reptilians, well, they'd gone. And I don't know what they were, what part they had to play in it. I have no idea. But I was ordered to dress in my night clothes. And I was relieved because this thing had given me a chance to, you know, to get out of here. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I had to follow this grey, as they call them, through this corridor. So where the room was that I'd been in, there was another part that went on. There was no door that separated it because I think the smoke or the steam or whatever it was masking all that. And I was led towards what I thought was a wall. And the grey stopped and the instruction was go. Well, I'm like, go where? Where? I was trying to deal with what had happened then. And my mind starts to get to that point where I'm thinking, I don't understand what's happening to me here. And then the door opened and I could see the village from a height. It was now in the early hours of the morning, very early hours of the morning. And there was another craft by our conservatory with something under it. So I was ordered to eject the craft. And I was ordered not to look to my right or left because there were another two greys assisting me to the ground, floated to the ground. And when I got to the ground, I was met by the last being that I remembered that gave me the jitters because the greys had gone. I was ordered not to look back. I was just ordered to look to the front of me. And there was what I call Noddy, not in the Enid Blyton literal sense of the famous author of her time, but this grey that looked more human. But it was, it had its arms folded. It was wearing a one-piece uniform. It had knee-length boots. It had this very pear-shaped face with a pronounced point to the chin, and the eyes were black. And it wore this stupid pointed hat on its head that seemed to just reach the underneath of the craft. We're almost near the end here. So he's got his arms folded and he's looking at me. And I mean, you know, when someone's angry, this guy is angry with me. I could feel my stomach as though it was being punched. And I'm like, I wanted to punch him, but I couldn't move. I felt suspended and I was angry. I'm like, why are you angry with me? I've just been up there. They've done all this and you're standing there looking at me as though I'm a piece of dirt. I wanted to hit him. And yet he seemed familiar in some way. So I thought, well, I've got to have something. I need some proof. I said to him, and a light bulb came into my head, and I said, how the hell am I able to get through locked and bolted doors? I mean, how can you do that? If you give me the answer, I'll know that this is real. I can tell people. Well, he looked shocked, completely shocked. His face changed. And when he started to speak, he moved his head back as though in a trance. And out of his voice came this electronic rasping, like one of the old ZX81 voice synthesizers my brother and I had back in the 80s. And immediately I went crashing through the conservatory glass doors, crashing through the kitchen door, crashing through the bedroom. And then as I entered the body, I immediately had a nosebleed and I had to go to the loo to sort myself out. I had 3 triangular marks behind my right ear that my brother tried to photograph with a instant Polaroid camera that never came out. I have 3 small marks on my right arm. I suffered nosebleeds to the right nose. And I also found it difficult to walk. So that, and still to this day, I don't understand what had happened. But as I said, I'm working with another researcher who has been helping me after all these years, because I will not let this go, because I want to know what happened and why it happened. And it was so real. I actually had physical marks. Now, I also had some problems with my right ear, which some years ago I had looked at on 3 occasions. And on the last occasion, when I went to the doctors, strangely, they looked in there again and they said it looks like it's healing and it looks like it has a crystalline structure to it. And when one of the doctors left, the other doctor said to me, she said, "Have you been abducted by aliens?" Well, I went back to my car, far worse than I walked into the hospital. Yeah. And I couldn't, for the love of God, understand or know why she would say that. I mean, I'm a patient. They don't really know much about who you are. I'm like every other, wonderful Joe Public. We're all important, but I'm just like a passing person that needs looking at. So this then led me.
Can I just ask you, Philip? So when you went to the doctor and you had this crystalline thing in your ear,
yes,
did they just chuck it away, or did you get to keep it, or?
No, they didn't extract it. I'm sorry. I didn't make myself clear. When they examined the ear with their tools that they use, I can't remember now. I'm not that clever with the medical things. But when they looked in, this is what she saw. She said it looks like it has a crystalline structure and it's still healing. Well, I'm sitting there thinking, because before I'd gone to the doctors, he'd had a good poke around in there, but didn't say much of anything. And I thought to myself, well, if there's something in there, surely they would have sent me to an ear specialist or someone of this type. But I thought, maybe I meant to have it. Maybe whatever it is, because I had felt it move on one occasion, just one occasion. I felt it move back in my ear. And it's been in there for years.
So it moved in your ear. You felt it move. Because I've actually had a similar thing in my ear, in my right ear. And the doctor looked, he couldn't see anything because it's kind of, it's in the ear, but it's under the ridge. So it's very hard to see it. But I have actually felt it move, which is very strange. It's a very strange sensation.
Yes, I mean, we still don't know what they are. I'm not claiming that I'm being tracked by aliens, but it's interesting.
Well, I believe you are.
Yes, after 1989, a lot of things changed for me, and the UFO activity seemed to increase. And thank God we got some proof in 2016, on the 9th of April, 2016. And that's coming. I don't make a note of the books, but that's in the new book that's coming out. There's photographic evidence and it's been analyzed, which I'm grateful for. We had something at least.
Yeah, because it's I'm a channel for the Pleiadians, and it's okay for me to say that, but we need science. We need to back things up, as much as we possibly can. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, your experience with the Greys, was it all through telepathy, or did you? Okay.
No, all through. It's really weird when you say, and I love what you said there, Soma. When you say telepathy, people instantly assume that it's very clear, but I just have to clarify that the experience that I had, it was almost as if it's a knowing, an instruction with a knowing to be told what to do. It's very bizarre. When someone says telepathy, someone immediately assumes that it will work the way they imagine. But when it's actually instigated, it's quite amazing. But also it comes as like a voice, but also a knowing, as though I believe the Greys or other interdimensional species. I mean, there's more than the Greys. They're not all bad.
Yeah.
But I believe that there is a faction of them that unfortunately have perhaps fallen foul. They're we understand that we have the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. It's the same with us humans.
Yeah.
I joked with Kathleen Marden who is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, and she's a brilliant author and researcher, as you know herself. But I said that she said rogue, rogue greys, like some badass greys out there, like a cowboys. But although I can laugh about it now, it has opened up perhaps areas of the psyche that were previously closed to me. So am I grateful for the experience? Well, I wish it hadn't happened the way that it had. And this was the really horrible thing. The really nasty thing about this was not the aliens themselves, if we term them that, but the public, because I then, without any fault of my own, had belonged to several UFO groups in my later years, and I was exploited by the television networks who wanted.
I didn't see any of your TV/media work where they twisted things on you.
Oh yeah, no. I've got it on video. Do you remember the old videos? I was with Malcolm Robertson and Nick Pope, Georgina Bruni, and Omar Fowler. They called the program X-Files or X-Fools. It was a live television debate. I can't remember if it was what television program. It was in Nottingham. And we were told that the debate was to be a constructive argument of the UFO phenomena. I think Malcolm Robinson would know. He's a brilliant researcher, good friend also. He would remember what studio it was, but it was live and it was recorded. It went out live. But you see, unfortunately, with live recordings, the presenter then, and I have nothing against Kay Adams, the Scottish TV presenter. She's a very nice person. She's just doing her job, like all people in television studios. But
well, it is a setup, isn't it? I mean, they do set us up to look like fools and to be made out laughing stock.
Yeah, that's what they want. You see, the thing is, though, when you're harboring a secret, and the establishment, or the system, as I call it, that we serve, what it has done very cleverly, and I'm sure this is linked back to Roswell, and I don't care what anyone says, if I may just say, if it had been anything other than a mogul weather balloon that had crashed in Roswell, and it was that top secret, surely the military or the army at that time would have been keeping a close eye on where it came down. They didn't. And if it was that top secret, they would not have had Major Jesse Marcel kneeling in front of a camera with this said secret material laying in front of him. So we do know from then, because it was the first time that a UFO recorded was found and discovered, then was the birth of conspiracy theory, the silencing. So this is not new. You know, I think every other person involved in spiritualism or the truth of that and ufology understand that the system has, and you've quite rightfully said, my lovely, very correctly, that it's not just about the UFO subject here or psychic phenomena or the survival of human consciousness beyond this realm, but about history.
Because it's linked in, Philip. It's
absolutely
linked in our true history, our true science, our true technology, and where we really come from. One thing I just wanted to talk about with you, and maybe let you know, maybe you already know this, but my understanding, what I've been shown, is that I don't come from here. I come from the Pleiades, and like most other starseeds. All other starseeds, I would say, don't come from here. We come from somewhere else. And what happens is we've contracted ourselves to be here at this time on Earth, especially this time on Earth with everything that's going on, in order to help humanity to wake up to what the reality of what's really going on. And we are tracked somehow energetically by positive ET energies and negative ET energies who know who we are energetically before we get here, before we know who we are. And I do believe, I've heard several stories where starseeds have seen UFOs when they're a child. And I think that is very significant. And I do believe that I do believe you are a starseed. And I do believe that we are collectively as starseeds tracked and traced, and they know. When I say they, I mean the negative ET energies and the positive ET energies, because there is both. Know who we are before we even do.
Yes, and you
that,
know,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And I go with the emphasis with regards to studies of the survival, sorry, of human consciousness, that we consider ourselves only human. That is the biggest mistake ever. We as souls have incarnated in other star systems, and on most occasions it's very possible that those ancestors from other systems come in this time when you have incarnated without remembering your true heritage, for them to come and check up on you to see how you're doing. And I absolutely agree with you there 100%. People, especially I think within the UFO field of investigations, they have tried very hard to put everything and squeeze it in a small box. We, as you know, as an advanced soul, are far more than human, and we have coexisted beyond the known laws of other dimensions of awareness, especially the universe. So I absolutely totally believe that also that there is a negative influence that is part, and I think I heard the wonderful Laura Eisenhower doing a talk once, and I do, I do admire her work, and I think she's like yourself, because I've heard about you as well, my lovely, are doing a wonderful job to bring this to the attention of the general public. But there are bad ETs, as they're called, and it wouldn't surprise me if they've worked at one point in coalition with higher establishments here on Earth. But somehow the treaty has gone pear-shaped, so to speak. So, but certainly, I do believe that we are much more than the flesh and blood that we occupy, and that the memories of the past are stored deep within the soul or the auric energy field that cannot be administered during this lifetime all the time. But the more sensitive you become, the more aware you become, the more you're able to access this information, which is fascinating, because I think we need a blank canvas when we come to the planet, because if we knew our origins, there would be no point in us continuing the journey that we've elected to take. And here on Earth, well, yes, I mean, it's, excuse my French, I don't mean to, it's a bloody mess. I mean, if you look around now, and I think people like yourself and many other good souls are here to awaken the dormancy. The sleepers must awaken through this universal cosmic dance of life. And I think that there are many factors involved. So we don't have all the answers as to why things happen, why we elected to come here, what our purpose is. But I believe that when we return back to source, as individual, of course, that and much more of our journey will be revealed to us. So I think you're absolutely correct there, 100%.
Thank you, Philip. I'm surprised and delighted that you've heard of me. Laura has become a friend.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, do you, as a starseed, are you aware that you are a starseed, and do you know where you come from?
No, I am aware to a degree, because I remembered something very strange. This has not been something that is an amalgamation of fantasies or memories that are mixed up, because you can differentiate from what you know from past lives. For instance, I remember a life in India as a poor slave boy. Now, going back to the StarSeed, there was one memory that I recall, and it's not just a memory, because when you experience these moments of remembrance, they also, you feel from them. It's almost as if you're awakening.
It's an experience.
Yes, and I remembered this room, and it was very large, and there was a lot of light in the walls, and where the floor was, there seemed to be like a dip. And I could see that I was a baby, but not what we would call human. But I knew that where I was safe. I knew that I felt like I belonged there. That's all I remembered. But it's certainly, and I've always felt as a child that I never belonged on the planet. I was always asking questions, you know, Mum, where do I come from? And you know, Mum, my mum's very spiritual as well. She'd say the womb. No, where did I come from? Where was I before I was? And it's only when death, when someone that you know that you love dies, that opens up a barrage of other questions. So I was always a curious kid like yourself and many of the others to find out who and what. But I've never ever once felt comfortable on this planet. I've always felt like as a kid, after the initial sighting of the sphere, I wanted the spacemen to come and take me home. You know, I cried in ET because I wanted to get on his craft.
It's a very common symptom where you feel like you don't belong here and you just want to go home, and you don't even know where that is. You just feel like you don't fit in here because we don't fit in.
No.
One other thing I wanted to ask you, Philip, well, I've got lots of questions for you, but one of them is, there seems to be, the way I, excuse me, the way I understand it is that we are starseeds, and that is the main, I don't even want to call it a title because it's not really a title, but it's a description. It's a main description. And then we have a lot of subcategories like psychic, like medium, like healer, like Reiki master or shamanic practitioner or clairvoyance, clairaudience, all these abilities. But I think the main title or main description actually is starseed, and all the other things are just subcategories. So I think that is where the connection comes in to UFO experiences and UFO abductees and positive ET energy and negative ET energy. It's not because we're psychic or medium. We are psychic and medium because we are starseeds. We come in with these abilities, with these extra sensory abilities that most normal people don't have. And I think that's what the connection is.
Yes, and I agree with you there. I mean, you know, when you think about it, when we're dealing with the UFO subject, once again, I draw back to the emphasis that everything is pigeonholed into a tiny box. We're trying to fit too much that doesn't make sense into one box. This encompasses a whole paradigm of different areas: clairvoyance, healing, remote viewing, the extension of human consciousness. You know, the system that we're brought up in is so wicked, and I'm sorry, because its programming has belittled what we should be and we're evolving into. And of course, I was very ashamed of myself when I was younger, because anything to do with channeling or this type of thing, I used to laugh at, because the system said to you that it didn't exist. But hang on a minute, but UFOs exist, and they were saying, no, it's fantasy. So I wanted to discover, first of all, hang on a minute, either I'm lying or the system's lying. I wanted to find out which one of us was lying. So if it's telling us that, you know, there's no such thing about starseeds, there's no such thing about hybrids or, you know, other systems, dimensions of awareness, as well as other planets, about soul survival. No, I was one of these curious fellows who wanted to dig and dig and dig. Yeah, and I'm still digging. And, you know, I don't have the answers, but I have my own theories. And I think as a united front of souls together, I think it's lovely when we embrace one another and we talk and we discuss the different ideas that we have with regards to what our beliefs are. It's like, if I just stay here very quickly, the near-death experience. We know that human consciousness survives this state beyond the paradigm of death, as it were. But every experience is slightly different, although there are similarities between the experiences that people have. The same with the UFO contact. They happen on different spheres or levels of awareness that's comfortable or sometimes uncomfortable for the individual experiencing that. So what we have to understand is that here is the magic. This is the gateway right in here. It's called, as everyone knows, the human brain. But the system that we serve has damned us to dumb us down. But my God, like you and many other brilliant researchers know that contact is achieved also through this, because we did an experiment years ago that proved categorically that this can actually communicate with them, rather than, you know, the deceased just communicating with you, rather like your mobile phone hardware, i.e. the brain with the software coming in, signaling that we can't see, bend, destroy, or corrupt. And the device is just a filtering mechanism to download the information into a language that we can understand. So I think on varied levels of our spirituality, of our universal spirituality, I would use there, is that we come in different forms and different awarenesses of consciousnesses. But I've often thought, and I must joke here, I do have a wicked side to me. I say to everyone, I said, we must have been drunk on the other side before coming down here, electing to come to Earth. I think a lot of souls over there scarper when that comes up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, I mean, that's funny, but I think it's because you know, when we're over there before we get here, that we're on such a higher frequency. We don't really understand how low this frequency is before we get here.
Yes, yes, and it's very low. And I can tell you now, not just because of, I won't mention the word what we're going through, but I think this is something that we've always felt. There's always been wars and destruction, secrecy, you know, the most awful things that you can ever imagine. And I think sometimes, as sensitives as ourselves, you get frightened, you get fearful of the world. You know, sometimes it's like you think you're going to end up in a psychiatric ward because other people around you seem to be operating like robots.
Yeah.
And it's like you've woken and you're saying, well, hang on just a minute. Are you no, they want to carry on. But I can't accept that, and I won't, because of my understanding of not only the UFO reality, the abduction reality, you know, the StarSeed reality, but also of life after death, and understanding our purpose within what we call life and the universe. And, you know, you and Laura, if I may say this, Laura Eisenhower, I remembered watching a wonderful documentary that she'd done. And we're all on the same page, you know, because she was, and I was like, yes, yes, yes. I mean, if she had her way, she'd go in there, straighten them all out straight away.
Yeah, I know. And I think a lot of us are on the same page and we don't realize it. And I'm talking about the spiritual groups. So you've got the UFO people, you've got the spiritualists, you've got the healers, you've got the shamanic practitioners, you've even got people like the drummers and the you know, there's so many different groups within spirituality and spiritualism as well, and we all seem to even within the spiritual groups, we just seem to really be in that one group. Yes. And actually we need to step into all of it because it's all connected, you know, and we are all connected. And I think that this is an amazing time on Earth where it's a birthing process, and it's very painful birthing process, but I do see a positive outcome. I see that the veil of amnesia that was placed around the Earth is being pulled away, So we are evolving. We are evolving into a higher, we are evolving, you know, our minds are evolving, our brains are evolving, our bodies are evolving. We're going through what some people would call ascension, I believe.
Yes, and I love music. I love vibration. I love listening to. There's one composer I'll just say here. Excuse me, Vangelis, who did the he did a lot mythology, I think it was called, or if I remember correctly, I probably got it wrong, but the music, when you see the people all working in harmony, in unison, that is beautiful. I think, you know, when we work as a team and we're all on the same level, we can achieve the most amazing things. However, the system has made damn sure that that will not happen. They want the orchestra to not be in sync. They want everyone not to be playing the same instruments, you know, with the same timing with one another. So we can see that the world is in a very bad place. And the system knows this. The draconians, they know what's going on, and they feed from the fear. They feed from the disruption. And that's what they want. It's what keeps them alive. But, you know, I believe that my own understanding is that we will get through this on some level, because when you love, when you deal with love from the heart, when you deal not just from the heart, but you really feel it coming into the core essence of your soul, you know, when you look in the face of those adversaries, that they cannot harm you, they cannot destroy you, that they are weak. And I've, you know, this research has led me in down some very dark corridors with regards to what's really going on. And, you know, and this is what the media machine does, because it's connected and affiliated with the masters who are always hidden, the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who hide behind, you know, suits and money. You know, at the end of the day, we know there's corruption and they want it because it's easier to control and manipulate us and stop us from reaching the, you know, the place where we're meant to be. So I totally understand what you're saying there, my lovely. Absolutely, yes, definitely.
Thank you, Philip. How do you spell that piece of music? Vangelis?
Vangelis. He's done the most amazing pieces of music. Vangelis, and I think is it mythology? I don't have I'm one of these people now who gets a little bit confused with computer technology. You'll see it, mythology or something, mythos or something like that. I'll kick myself afterwards for saying it wrong, but it's to do with the Greek gods and also the beauty of the harmonious music that it invokes. And one of the people on there who on the YouTube, because I've got them as hard copies, as CDs, but I saw it on YouTube and someone said, what beautiful healing music. And I thought, yes, because vibration, as we know, music, sound, vibration, when it works in harmony with you, you are in harmony with it. I think a lot of people are getting a lot of loud noise, a lot of clutter. It's disrupting their physical being and also their spiritual nature. Although you can't destroy the soul, you cannot destroy the soul simply because it's energy. It's like trying to destroy a signal from your mobile phone. You can't do it. You can destroy the hardware, but you will never be able to destroy the software. So music is very important. And you'll find also that a lot of musicians get abducted and have sightings of UFOs, which is very interesting as well. Yeah.
And yeah, I think a lot of the great composers and people in our past history were actually channels for positive ET energy. But going back to this piece of music, Philip, how do you spell it? Vangelis, V-A-N?
Yeah, V-A-N-G-E-L-I-S. G-E-L-I-S. I think that's how you spell it. But he's a brilliant composer. He's written, but this one is to do with the NASA space mission to Mars. It's beautiful. When you listen to that, I think it's about 11 or 12 tracks on there. It will transport you. I'm not you know, one of these people for Vangelis to sell his work. I'm just a fan of his work. So please, I have no hidden agenda.
I wanted to mention something just because you mentioned Mars there. This year has been quite profound for me. And I don't mean with the outside world. I mean with my inner world, with what's going on, you know, with me. And I've had a lot of experiences this year. It's been kind of, I've been zapped with energy, you know, and I've had a lot of experiences. One of the experiences I had this year in the dream time when I was asleep is I was taken to what I now believe to be Mars. And I didn't know where I was at the time, but I was taken to a planet that looks like Mars. And I was shown that they were, I can't remember, sometime this year, they were building rapidly, quickly, because there was this sense of urgency that they needed to build. And they were building these buildings, and they had these like bulldozers or large machinery. I wouldn't even call them bulldozers, but the diggers, large diggers, and they were building, but there was, and I was with this lady who I didn't like her energy at all. And she had long, dark, curly hair, like waist length curly hair. And I've never seen her before, I don't think. I've never seen her since either, I don't think. But she took me up in this lift, and she showed me the area, and it was a vast area, but there was such an intensity where they had to build, and I just had a sense that they needed to build quickly because they wanted people to, or expected people to be going there. Like an influx of people that they needed to house and have somewhere for them to go. You know, they needed to have buildings or homes or something. Some I don't know if it was houses or if it was work offices, but they needed these buildings for the people to come.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, remote viewing, that's the extension of human consciousness beyond the physical, remote viewing or astral projection, or it's just merely different names, but it basically is stating that human consciousness is removing itself temporarily from its physical host, and it can see into the past, it can see into the future. Indeed, the remote viewers in the latter parts of the 1970s and 80s were actually instrumental secretly within the military establishment of performing these experiments. And I know that there was one chap under the training of Ingo Swann, who was an artist and a wonderful medium. He trained many of the gifted military into the spooky department to remote view, and one of them was checking out the moon, for example, and he'd seen some things on the moon and was warned by his military superiors to stay away from there. So, you know, there's a lot, again, with our history on planet Earth, which has been deliberately tampered, hidden, and the system wants this because it doesn't want us to understand our true heritage. And even my interests go even further back to the creation, the model of man, of how we evolved. And I don't believe in the natural selection, because if we had come through from natural selection, then what would have happened was that we wouldn't shy away from our very own sun, and also we wouldn't need to have to wear clothes. So you can see that we're so far removed from this whole process of what we call creation. And again, we've been lied to. So this lie continues with the scientific establishments. It goes even higher. But what's wonderful is that when you yourself go through these unique experiences, it's educating and telling you that there is life on these planets. And what makes me laugh is that NASA have just turned around and said, well, there's water or water particles on the moon. Well, shouldn't they have known that when they went there in 1969 through a lot of, and also of the orbiting satellites? I mean, come on, it's almost as if they're drip feeding the public with a load of rubbish. And I really feel that people they're stopping and saying, hang on just a minute. You know, what's going on here? And then what they do is the system will say, oh, conspiracy theorists. So basically, as we all know, and as I always say, conspiracy is a psychological weapon to turn the finger of doubt upon the inquiring mind. So that's all that conspiracy theory means. So I understand with what you're saying there, my lovely, in every way possible. So it's nothing new, but people like yourself and many others know what's really going on. You know, so it's no surprise at all.
I know, and yeah, I mean, I saw that recently where they're admitting that there's water on the moon and disclosing it, and I actually laughed at it. So I thought, really, you know, I mean, it's laughable, you know.
How about the monuments on Mars, which is all covered up? You know, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they think they buy us for plebs, they really do. But what's interesting is that, you know, we are aware that, you know, within the multifaceted areas of research, not just in ancient archaeology or indeed in creation or UFO research, I know one thing, and one thing that that I've learned is that we have been lied to. And no matter how much the system tries to make you look like that you're an idiot, that you're what was the word they used with me? A geek. who likes to write children's and science fiction. I realized later through my naivety that there was a corrupt system. I had no idea to begin with, because I thought that everyone was all calm and wonderful and they all shared these stories. Little did I realize that some of the programs were hell-bent on making sure that the public saw this all as nothing less than ridicule. And unfortunately, there are still a lot of people who believe that. But we, all we can do is, go forward with our own truths, with our own convictions of what we consider to be reality. And I think that's important. And the StarSeed is wonderful, StarSeeds.
And did anyone come to your defense? Did the other hosts, did the other people on the show?
Oh, yes. I mean, Omar Fowler. I mean, there was Nick Pope, the late, wonderful Georgina Bruni, who wrote You Can't Tell the People about UFOs. Malcolm Robinson. There were many esteemed guests there. And they were very angry afterwards at the way that the show had transpired. But, I remembered, I drove then and I was chauffeur driven, excuse me, to the studios and chauffeur driven back. And when I was chauffeur driven there, the chauffeur said to me, and I said, "Oh, I'll sit in the front with you. I'm not posh, I'll sit with you and talk to you, because I like to talk to people." But on the way back, I kind of like shriveled because the chauffeur had seen the program. And I had to spend the rest of the journey trying to explain to him that, no, I wasn't mad. So I found myself having to try to justify myself, to prove my innocence, to state that I wasn't mad. But, it was at that point, not with so many of the other programs I've been on. They've been very good. But the only problem with pre-recorded programs is that they can edit out the bits that you really want to say. So you can't win one way or the other. And that's how the system wants it. It revels in the ridicule, and it also revels in conspiracy theory. It needs the conspiracy theory to hide its lies and uncovers the truth, you see. That's why it needs the conspiracy to mess it all up, to confuse the person digging and sidetracking them.
And do you get targeted, and do you feel that that is part of targeting? Because I know for myself, I've been hugely targeted by Black Ops and Milabs and ridiculed at times as well for speaking out the truth and speaking out my experiences. So do you feel that that show was part of that?
Well, I did not at the time, but going forward, there had been a few occasions when I was writing the book Sky Crash Throughout Time, a continued investigation into the Rendlesham UFO mystery that came out many years ago. I had no idea of the complexity of certain cases, and I remembered sitting in the kitchen and seeing what I considered to be the ghost form of a military guy that came rushing towards me. And I remembered feeling shocked. And I remembered thinking to myself, oh my God, I've heard of these things before. And you'll laugh at this. We have to have a sense of humor. I was laughing, thinking that this guy would end up psychically killing me. So I'm laying in bed at night thinking, is there anyone around? So, I don't believe that it had been a ghost, but I am aware, and through my research and also through a few experiences, that may have been someone who had been checking up or seeing what was going on, because this is a real phenomena. And I believe that they're so far more advanced within their remote viewing capacities that it's quite staggering. But again, like the UFO subject, the hybrids, the greys, it goes on. No, they've put up a wall, and they're doing it even bigger now, because we have a big problem on our hands where human emotions are being subjugated to the point where we cannot try and find that spark, that light, that to lift us. It's like everything good is being sucked out of us.
We need to come back to our heart center and ourselves, and step away from the outside world and just come back to that inner self, that inner spark, that inner light, that God source, that peaceful space internally, that the internal peaceful space. And meditation is key. I wanted to ask you, Philip, So do you believe there are two types of greys, one being tall greys and one being the small greys? Or is
Yes,
it
I
more than
do.
that?
No, I think there are different factions of them. You know, I can only report on what I had witnessed, what I had seen. Indeed, when you are presented, or they rather present themselves to you, it's quite a shock. It's, you know, people say grey and they just pass it off like something from one of the movies on TV. But when you're actually in the company or you see them, it's a very different story. Especially when I was presented with what I call noddy, at the last part of my very bizarre experience. If you have seen animated plastic moving, that scares you. I remembered even as a kid watching, you know, being scared by these trolls by a few kids. This is long before the abduction. So there was something obviously in my level or the psyche which was frightened of trolls or scared of them for some reason or other, something I still don't understand to this day. But there are different factions of them. We have heard of the tall greys, and you know, a lot of them are good. You know, we have to understand that there are good factions of greys, and I always emphasize with people. We're always told the bad and negative, but there's also the good one, the good guys as well. And I believe that they use people, channels, to bring forward their information in any way they see fit to be able to use the individual to their advantage in getting the message through to what they need to say or what they want to share with the world, as it were. And I tell you something I do listen to quite a lot, is Karen Carpenter's Calling Occupants. And you know, I wondered why, you know, she did this, and I found out a lot more about that. But it's a beautiful song, and if you listen to the words, she's absolutely correct with what she's singing. You know, open your mind, you know, telepathy, this type of thing, channeling. She's stating it within the song, and most people just listen to it because it's a good song. But if you listen to the words, you can hear what she's saying. It's quite a beautiful, and then I think for that time was a dramatic piece of music that went on for some time. I think they had to cut it down a little bit from its original version, and that was all to do with Contactee, because God loved them. People wanted the visitors to come. They wanted to share. They, like me and my brother, when we were younger, wanted the space people to come and take us with them. And then, of course, you'll get some cruel person coming forward and saying, well, a psychologist will just state that it's this fantasy or this memory. Oh, do you know what? Whatever. You get that all the time. But I know what I consider to be real and what is not real.
Yeah. And you know, like when you have an experience, and this is for anyone listening as well, you know, when you have one of these experiences, it's real.
Yes.
And
And you know, yeah.
you often feel that the physical pain of it in the morning, or you have marks on your body like you've had, Philip.
Yes.
And you know it's real. You know
Yeah.
it's real.
And you know, the memory loss could be attributed because the auric energy field, the real essence of you, has been taken outside of the normal constraints of time as we know it. So because it's being removed from its temporary physical housing, it is brought into a domain that has no time. And therefore, this may explain why a lot of abductees need a regressionist to help to retrieve the memories in some kind of coherent pattern. So, you know, as I said, it's fascinating and really incredible. And
That's very interesting. That's very
yes,
interesting, because there is no time. Time doesn't exist.
no, and
But
even for those, yeah,
that's very
crossover.
interesting. Um, and so are you still being abducted in a negative way, or do you have positive experiences as well? And do you channel, or do you ever see yourself being able to channel? Because I know through watching I watched some of your interviews today, and in one of them I saw that through this negative abductee experience, you began to have mediumship ability. So
Yes.
do you think, I mean, are you able to channel now, and do you think in the future you will at some point maybe channel the positive ETs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt about that. My mediumship came later in life, but I guess I always had it. Maybe the experience opened something in me, or maybe it was through the trauma of losing someone or family members and friends who had died. So a medium that I saw, a brilliant medium, she actually foresaw most of what was happening in my life. And she said to me that you'll be a channel, and that Edgar Cayce was written across my forehead, because she said to me, are you on page 97 of a book? And I said, yes, I am, of his. So, you know, she foresaw this. And I believe that perhaps in the future, in some way, I will be able to do that. But I mean, I just use clairvoyance with factual evidence, and I always ask for a yes or no from the recipient to deal with the information. I'm one of these. I'm not hard, but I have to deal with exactly what I get through, and I've softened up through the many years of experience. I think that happens to all of us. But certainly, we performed an experiment many years ago at Rendlesham Forest that has been recorded, which categorically proved, that the mind can connect with your mind, can connect with these alternative dimensions of awareness. And that is absolute fact. And I guess I needed to see that in order for me to understand it on a greater capacity for research purposes. So we're all important. I think that my negative experiences taught me a lot more about myself, I think.
And have you had positive experiences as well with positive ET energies?
Well, you know, that's interesting, because I mean, we've seen UFOs before, and after a while, they didn't harm me. They didn't kill me, rather. I felt harmed or violated. But after that, when you know that you've survived it and you've got through that experience, they didn't hurt me to the point. In fact, I feel more aware. So was it for my own good? Perhaps that was possible, even though part of me is saying, how dare you? At that point, there was little understanding of what was going on. But I do believe that I have been, you know, manhandled by perhaps a rogue group of greys. I don't know. I can't prove anything of that. And I'm still trying to understand it. But I feel much better in myself and more supremely confident. The last UFOs we saw in April of 2016, on the 9th of April 2016, was absolutely spectacular. There were other people involved with that. They demonstrated to my brother and I once again of their, you know, their reality. But why they did it still eludes me. We don't get any answers to it. But there was no contact. There was no feeling of contact. Although we tried to mentally send messages, nothing came back. The crafts just maneuvered. The triangular crafts seemed to maneuver in a way that suggested intelligence. And look what we can do. And here we are, like a reminder. Don't forget we're here. But I'm fascinated by it, and it's in now, after all these years of study and still understanding and still research, because we don't have all the answers. I'm so open to many other variables of the UFO contact experience, because, you know, mine back in 1989 was like this, and I could only see this, but now I see a wider perspective, you see.
Yeah. and I think that's collective as well, because I think I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so, you know, I never shared I got to a point where I think I was 8 or 9, where I stopped, or maybe 10, and I stopped sharing my experiences because they were so way out there, you know.
Yeah.
And Spirit told me, they told me, you know, stop sharing your experiences because they'll lock you up, you know. And I actually had an out-of-body experience at the age of 12, where Jesus came to me, and I was on the verge of committing suicide. I mean, I was on the verge of committing suicide, and he because I had that experience, I didn't. But I never told my family. I never told anyone until when was it? 2004, 2005. I began to start telling friends, but for years I never told anyone. I just kept it to myself. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. And one of the things that the Pleiadians have told me this year, since COVID kicked off, is that there will be there will be an increase, a dramatic increase of UFO activity and sightings around the earth that will not be shared in the media. And I made a short video of it, and I put it put it out there on the Facebook and the social media on my YouTube channel. And then just after that, I think about a month or a couple of weeks after that, there began to be more UFO sightings that weren't being shown on the media.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That happens all the time. I mean, the media are controlled by the corporate giants. They're all working hand in glove with one another. They want us to turn the other way, nothing to see here. And they do it time and time again, and people play into their hands. But it's people like you and me and many, many, many other researchers and investigators and experiencers who are being watched. And this has been proven to me, my work, my research being hacked and looked at, and on a few occasions brought down, especially where the missing people and the cloning, the greys and the cloning paradigm that I was talking about. So they are aware, but of course, you know, we're not powerful people. You know, sometimes you need to keep a job to keep yourself going and fund it. But I love this because even though you're scraping the barrel as a researcher and quote unquote an author as well, it's like, but I enjoy it. I love it because it's my passion and my drive, and truth is more richer in its worth than money.
And I believe it's why you're
yeah.
here. I believe it's a purpose, it's a mission, it's why you're here.
Well, I'll go back to the other side and I'll say, when I reach the desk, and I've got to be humorous here, I'll say, what on earth was that all about?
Yeah, it's been so great to have you on, Philip, and I'd love to have you on again if that's okay with you.
Oh, I'm very honored to come on your show, and I'm very delighted. I mean, you know, I never asked to come on any shows. I get invited, and I'm extremely honored. And if it helps your wonderful audience, as it has helped me, as it helps each and every one of us, then it's a tiny little part that we can contribute to this massive mystery and a beautiful, you know, connection of works into the paranormal.
Because we all make a difference. We all make a difference. And when we stand up and come together and unite collectively,
Yes.
Especially in the spiritual fields, you know, that really makes a difference to the collective on an energetic level. And it's been proven now that when you sit and meditate in a group with a certain focus, that makes a huge difference to the local community. But how can people get in touch with you? Do you do readings? And I know you've got several books as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tied up with readings on a weekly basis, and that's on Facebook. People PM me on Facebook, or my niece Charlie, who sorts that out, because I just, you know, we're all busy souls, aren't we? We've got other work to do. And my books are available. Well, they were published by different publishers. I had to bring it through on Amazon because I lost my publishers because they sadly passed over. But you can get them on Amazon, and I'm on Facebook, and you can check me on YouTube. You know, if you want to do a search on me. But I think it's wonderful because we're all important instruments to the unfolding of reality, and I think that is beautiful. I have a new UFO book, if I may boast, and just push a little.
Yes,
Because
please
you
do.
know. But it makes me laugh when people say you're making millions, and I say to them, well, let me hand you my card, and you can go and check my bank balance, and then come back and reiterate what you said. So my new book is coming out, which I'm excited, is called You, the Public Deceive, the Grand UFO Deception. And that's coming out by the esteemed British ufologist Philip Mantle, UFO royalty, a lovely man, a great deal of respect for him. My twin brother and I have for him. And my twin brother's got a book called The Digital Demon. Now, the You, the Public Deceived is coming out on the 1st of January 2021. Although it says unavailable on Amazon, they had to hold it back. And it's being released then. And I have Guardians of the Dead out, which you can get on Amazon, which is getting some nice reviews, which is about the afterlife, the survival of human consciousness, and some interesting experiences that are relayed within that book. So yes, that's how you, if you want, you can get the book on ebook, and paperback. Yeah.
That's great. And do you have a Facebook page where people can get in touch with you?
Yes, it's Philip Kinsella. I'm working, that's Philip with one L, and Kinsella, which is K-I-N for November, S-E-L-L-A. And that's yours truly. And I'm working on I'm trying to put together a new website. I will say the last one that I was on, I had some years ago, was proving quite expensive. So I kind of like wanted to create one that will deal with UFOs and also the psychic phenomena, because we have to be very careful when approaching the subject, because people look at one subject and they think the other one is entirely separate. So we have to please the audiences on that level. But you can just check me out there. But I'm very honored to come on your wonderful show, and I'm very delighted to have the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Philip. It's been a real delight. It's been a real treat, and you're so down to earth. It's been great to talk to you.
Well, as I said, I think I'm turning into my mum's dad. Because we were very much like him, and I think my brother, my twin, and I are kind of turning into carbon copies of him. You know, give me a shovel and get me to some archaeological site for the secrets, and I'll be there. Trust me. Unfortunately, not when the situation's around us at the moment.
Yeah. And I have a very serious question to ask you, Philip.
Of course.
It's very serious. Have you ever pretended to be your brother?
Oh yes, embarrassingly so. You see, we have the same voice, and I remember at work we would mess around with one another and using each other's voices. And I have pretended to be my brother on one occasion, but it backfired, unfortunately, because when I was pretending to be him, my brother came round the corner and someone called his name, and of course it let it all out. You can tell the slight differences between us, although our voices are very much the same, you see. But yes, we were little devils when we were younger, but that's, you know, being kids and growing up. And I don't feel like I've grown up. I still want to be a big kid inside, you know. I don't ever want to grow up, as it were. You know, having a wicked sense of humor, and also an insatiable approach to these fascinating subjects, while my really serious and very dedicated in those areas of study, which is my passion and my drive. Yes, definitely.
And do you have any final positive message for people listening?
Yes, I say to all of your listeners who are embracing their differences, please believe that you are unique, that you are amazing, that you are immortal, you're eternal, and don't be afraid to push yourself forward. Dream the big dream. Even if others tell you that you can't do it, just tell them that you can, and be the good, shining light that you are. We've been programmed by a system that's telling you can't. You turn around and you say, yes, I can. And that changes everything for you. So believe in yourself and believe in your truths, and let no one disrupt your belief system. That is a very dangerous thing to do.
Thank you, Philip. That's really lovely. And that means quite a lot to me as well. I will put all your links onto the YouTube description.
Very
and
kind.
if anyone listening would like a reading with me, or a direct voice channeling sessions from the Pleiadians, please email me at the Pleiadian Child at hotmail.com. And so, yeah, I'd like to say bye for now. And I'd love to connect in with you again.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor, and I'm always very honored indeed to link with like minds, and to, you know, discuss intellectually these wonderful and fascinating subjects, which encompass, you know, a wonderful array of you know, phenomena that we know is real, and it's just trying to change the world in its viewpoint, its very negative viewpoint, and turn things around to help the children of this planet, to help all of us to reach outwards, to embrace the bigger picture of what we are, not just flesh and blood vehicles with a sell-by date. We are energy, we're spirits, we're souls that are not just human either. So that is wonderful. Bless your heart. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you, Philip. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye
God
for
bless.
now. God bless.
God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.